Now it's time to have a conversation that I'm sure you may be interested in, or you should be interested in now. Protests all over the country or all over the world is a right. But in today's world, what do we see? That very right that we think we're entitled to is under attack. This morning, we've been joined in the studio by the country director of Amnesty International Ghana. She's in the person of Genevieve Partington. She's going to give us insight about the Protect the Protest campaign, which has been launched by the Amnesty International Ghana. Genevieve, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you so much for making time to join us in the studio.
Thank you too.
And it's good to have you here.
Great.
Now, let's go straight into the conversation. First, talk to us about what the Protect the Protest campaign is about and why there was even a need for the Amnesty International Ghana to launch a campaign such as this.
Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. So, Protect the Protest is a global campaign, actually, by Amnesty International. And we launched the campaign in Ghana last year, March. And it's basically about looking at the rights of protesters, ensuring the rights of protesters are respected. We also look at safety of protesters, but we also look at the other stakeholders involved in protests, like the police. Are the police working within the international framework of protests, for example? So these are some of the issues we look at. And you'll see this issue is so key now because of the protests happening across the globe. Since last year, there have been an increase in protests, not just in Africa, but across the world due to, economic crisis and, citizens being unhappy with current government reforms.
Beautiful. Now, what is the central message of the whole campaign? And since March, how has the rollout been like?
So far, so good. What we are doing is we are really engaging. We have advocacy, but we also have public education. So in terms of advocacy, we try our best to engage with the police, other security forces as well, just for them and us to understand their role during protests, ensure that those roles are being respected and not overstepped. Because in our Amnesty Human Rights reports, for example, there was an issue of excessive use of force by the police. You see last year, during the Stop Galamsey protest, 53 protesters were arrested and charged. And during that protest, there were a number of people injured. So, our rights being respected, our police acting within the national framework in ensuring citizens can come out and feel safe to protest, but also, not harm the citizens. So we've been doing that. We've also had a lot of engagement with the government. Last year, the former president actually showed verbally his commitment towards ensuring the right to protest for all citizens in Ghana. Verbal commitment is very different from action because we got a lot of verbal commitment from the government. However, things went south during the September protests, for example. So that happens sometimes. And we're doing more in terms of education. It's very important that people know they can exercise their right to protest, but also how to be safe during protests. Sometimes people don't wear the right gear when they are going for protests. How to, cover yourself from bullets, the blunt bullets that they shoot out. What to do when you are arrested. Because sometimes people do not understand that you shouldn't really speak when you are arrested. You need to ask for your lawyer, for example. So we do a lot of public education around that. And I think lastly, we're trying to look at the Public Order Act. Currently in Ghana, we used to have an act and they've reviewed it, but still it kind of gives a little too much power to the police, where we are to notify the police if you want to hold a protest, but the time limit, there's no time limit for the police to get back to you. So sometimes the police can get back to you in 24 hours, and maybe you've already organized, you've done everything. Remember, this is a notification, not permission. So a lot has to be done around that as well.
Now let's talk about human rights. How does this protect the protest campaign connect or align with Amnesty's broader global human rights works?
So it's basically the right to freedom of expression and civic space. And a lot of people don't understand that if you want to demand rights from government, protest is a very effective way to do that. And we'll witness the protests last year in Kenya, the Gen Z protests that happened in Kenya. They wanted the government to stop a finance bill that would increase taxes. The moment they took to the streets, although yes, there were some injuries and deaths, the president did not sign that bill into law. So it shows that there's a direct sort of impact when you come out to the streets and demand your rights. The human rights issues as well have to do with how we engage security forces versus the protesters on the ground, and even third parties. You'll hear that in Kenya again this year, one of the sellers was killed through the shots, the bullets, live rounds were being fired in protest.
Not to cut you, but even in Togo, I think they started protesting last week.
Yes.
And we've seen videos on social media where security officers are spilling hot water on protesters.
Yes, and lashing them. They brought whips out, canes. And it's wrong. And Togo is also a very complex situation because the current ruling party has been in power since '67, and they've just been changing. It's the same family, the Nyasingbe family, and people are fed up. So they have a history of protest. They've been coming out. 2019, they came out again, and they won't stop till something is done, because there's a clear attack on democracy over there, and unfortunately I hear a number of people have died over there as well. So this is something that is ongoing. I know Ghana is definitely a different situation. This year I know there was a protest by the opposition party, and that apparently went smoothly. But my issue is, we hope it will go just as smooth when it is regular citizens of this country.
But a question I want to ask, do you think that protests have been effective and they serve the purpose for which people go on the streets to protest a particular issue or problem?
Yes, absolutely. Like I stated the Kenya example, even Ghana, back in the day when we had our independence, to get to independence, we had to protest. There are just so many examples that you'll see in our documentary, which you'll be showing later on today, where we show the history of protests and how that has really helped shape certain the frameworks and even our constitution in this country. So protest is extremely effective. However, sometimes there's the need for civil disobedience. You go to countries where protests are not allowed. If you're in that situation, it's termed civil disobedience, because you will still take to the streets against the state. It happens all the time. You see the American civil rights movement, where people did sit-ins. They go to restaurants and sit. It's an act of civil disobedience. It's an act of protest. And even Ghana, we saw that last year with the pensioners. Yes, they went to do sit-ins as well. So, you know, there are forms of civil disobedience, and it works. It really works.
But has Amnesty International looked at how authorities maybe come in to sort of block protesters?
Yes.
How they are going about the protest and all those things, and the kind of punishment or how the protesters are dealt with from the, say, the police officers or security officers. Has Amnesty International look at that one?
Yes, we have. So I'll give an example. So before the Stop Galamsey protest, we actually went to the formed police units. They are the ones that directly intervene in protests. And we had an engagement with them to understand the dynamics before the protest. It's very important to engage with the police. it's it's a love-hate relationship that has to exist. There's nothing really we can do about it. The police are our allies. Sometimes we're just not going to agree on things. So the meeting went well. Of course, we're not going to agree with everything they said. However, there are parts where there is excessive use of force of the police. Where on protest grounds where people can, intervene, beat protesters, and maybe the tear gas, sometimes the level of tear gas is too high, and that has injured people's eyes and stuff. And we also have to talk about the emotional trauma of protesters. When there's police brutality on the streets, when police attacks you, you could see that last year. Some media journalists, your clothes were being torn. Imagine you're a woman, you hide your phone between your legs and somebody is trying to grab your phone. Meanwhile, you have the right to video during protests. You are allowed. You are absolutely allowed. And that's where the journalists come in. It's so important to film and to document what happens during protests so that there's that accountability during the protest, so that if anything goes wrong, we are able to even use this in court.
But interestingly, when protests are happening and you pull out your phone to want to record, then you see the security services coming after you. Why are you recording? Why are you filming? Stop recording. Some of them even go as far as trying to hit your phone or even hit you in the process. Interesting. Now, let's talk about young people, because most times when these protests happen, it is us. It is always the young people. It's only on rare occasions that you see the aged, when need be, coming to support. What roles do young people play in this very campaign?
So I mean, it's important. We are the voice of the people. Majority of Ghanaians are youth. We are between the ages of 18 and 35. We conducted a survey on the protesters last year, and most of them were below 45 years. So that means you're getting a mix of Gen Z and more millennials coming to the streets. So that means we play a very key role in influencing our democracy, influencing policies, and pushing government to do certain things that we demand. So it's extremely important for us to have that right and responsibility, of course, because when we come out on the streets, we should be able to know that we are safe, right? And that the police are there to keep us safe. To protect us and not to attack us. That is why we need to work together. We are not each other's enemy, and sometimes protesters are seen as troublemakers. I think that is a narrative we have to really do something about. We have to change it, because when police hear, hey, you came out on protest, it's like
you're looking for trouble.
But meanwhile, it's your right as a citizen to exercise. And I wish more people will come to the streets when things are not going well, so that we rally around this. It's symbolic in nature as well.
Again, for you as Amnesty International Ghana, I understand that protesters mean a lot to you. But what are you doing to protect them, aside from this campaign that you've launched? What else are you doing to protect protesters?
For example, we had meetings with persons that have taken part in protests. It's very important the emotional trauma protests may carry, especially when you are attacked during a protest. So it's important to accompany these people through mental health screening. They need to see psychologists. It's very important. They have to have that kind of support, because sometimes you are traumatized after a protest and you don't even want to go out there again. Another form of support is actually we're trying to put together a report, a very brief report to submit to government on the human rights violations that happened during last year's protest. You will see there were issues of arrest. There were issues where some of the persons arrested were not part of the protest. They were third parties. Some were not were unwell, but were refused medical treatment. That is a fact, although the police may deny it. Some were also refused legal counsel,
Representation. Yeah.
legal representation. And, you know, once you deny legal representation even for hours and later provide it, it's still a denial of rights. So these are some of the issues we'll bring up. It's also about the conditions of the cells, the police cells, when you are held in custody. Some were over crowded. Some did not have good toilet facilities. I know it's an issue of resourcing, which sometimes the police do not have. So of course, it's an appeal to government to also do something about the police cells where you have the stations. I think the other issue that we had a very a challenge with was when protesters were being shifted from police station to police station. It was a tactic to disorganize and confuse the groups, the group of protesters. And on several occasions, we requested the police to provide the names of all persons they had arrested, including where they were stationed. This list was never provided. And we have the right to information. Under the Right to Information Act, the police actually have a duty to provide such a list to civil society. We requested for it. They were supposed to provide it. It wasn't provided. So these are some of the issues we need to clarify and to bring up so that it doesn't happen again. Because right now we need to be careful. What's happening in Kenya, what's happening in Togo, it can easily spill over. These things happen first through social media. You see that last year, the protests, it wasn't done majorly through physical meetings. They were done through social media. We mobilized ourselves through social media.
Especially with the Democracy Hub.
Exactly. A lot of communication was done via social media because having physical meetings were difficult. And it can happen again, and we should be prepared for it to happen again. But we want definitely a different story to tell than what is happening in Kenya and Togo. We don't want deaths. We don't want injuries. That is the key message over here. I really share a soft spot for what's happening in Kenya right now. Amnesty Kenya, for example, they are really on top of issues. They are also documenting. That's what Amnesty Ghana, if there's a protest, we have to document cases of abuse, cases of injury and death, for example, so that we are able to give recommendations to the government.
Now, I must commend you for what you're doing. One of Ghana's patriotic songs, there's a line in there that says, "We are all involved."
Yes.
So speaking of which, how can we as a people, the youth, support Amnesty International or Amnesty Ghana, Amnesty International Ghana, on this Protect the Protest campaign? Because as you rightly said, it will happen again. We'll see it happening probably year in and year out. How do we get involved?
So how do we get involved? Let's make noise on social media. The hashtag is Protect the Protest. Let's tweet, let's do whatever we can, especially for our brothers and sisters in Kenya and Togo. Let's expose the stories. Currently in Kenya, they are even using rape as a form of pushing fear in protesters. We are just lucky we didn't get down to that in Ghana, but we are not far from it. Let's be honest. So we need to do more in terms of exposing the wrongs, but also exercising safety during protests. Let's mobilize ourselves. Let's try not to destroy property during protests, because that is it's a misdemeanor. So you shouldn't be destroying property, raiding places and things like that. But you can definitely exercise your right to protest. Let's find ways to resist. Definitely when a police picks you up or tries to use a baton, there are ways where you can resist and ensure your safety as an individual. Yes. And then most of all, when being arrested, we need to know what to do when being arrested. Always put it on social media. Request for a lawyer. Don't speak to the police. Just say you need a lawyer, period. You know, because anything you say can be held against you at the end of the day. So we need to look into those things. Yeah, so as young people, we need to make more noise about protests, but we also need to document. Whenever you go to protest, bring out your phones. If you feel safe to bring out your phone and record, do so. Do so at a distance if you can, so that you do not get hurt or in harm's way. So these are some of the tactics we can use.
Right, so.
Right.
So you heard from Genevieve Pattington, a country director, Amnesty International Ghana. And the documentary airs today at 3 p.m. Please make sure that you are watching it. Make sure that you are watching it to know what really is in the documentary.
And of course, beyond watching the documentary, let's engage in the campaign on social media, as she says.
Exactly.
The hashtag is Protect the Protest Campaign. We are all involved indeed.
Thank you so much, Genevieve.
Thank you too.
We are grateful for your time. But